Hi, I'm Aaron Hernandez, and this is What's in the Deck Box, where we're going to be bringing you deck techs, team breakdowns, and various other things, talking you through what's being played at the deck box right now. I'm really excited today. We have Anthony with us, and we're going to be talking about Dredge. Now, Anthony, you just finished up our Tuesday Night Modern playing Dredge. How'd it go?
It was a little disappointing tonight. 2-2 was the record. It's not performed that poorly recently, but, sometimes you make the wrong mulligan decisions and you get punished for it.
Yeah, so you've been playing Dredge a lot recently?
Yeah, I put in some work prior to, SCG Charlotte into the deck, trying to learn it. Creeping Chill was a brand new thing. Everyone was really excited about it. And then it had a breakout finish in Dallas. So I got cold feet and audible to Storm, but went right back as soon as I could because the deck is just powerful.
So tonight it looks like you played Blue-Red Thing in the Ice, you played Storm, Esper Goryo's Vengeance, and Eldrazi Tron, excuse me. And it looks like your losses were to Thing in the Ice and Eldrazi Tron. It sounds like some unusual matchups today, Anthony.
Yeah, it was an interesting metagame tonight. I haven't seen Eldrazi Tron in a while. Esper Goryo's Vengeance is something that has not been in our metagame, period. And I'm usually the Storm player, so getting to play against somebody else playing Storm was entertaining for sure.
Now we know that Dredge is usually a game one deck. How'd your game ones go?
Most of my game ones were W's. I won every one of them except for round 4 against Eldrazi Tron, and they were able to resolve an early Ugin, and not much you can do
Kind of
against
hard
that.
to come back from Ugin, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so then the other half of the equation with Dredge is usually sideboarded games and your hate cards. How do you see any interesting hate cards this week?
My Blue-Red Thing in the Ice opponent brought in Ravenous Trap against me, and I haven't had very much opportunity playing against that card. It didn't do too much. It was the nail in the coffin in one of the games, but it was an interesting card to play around and play against. My Eldrazi Tron opponent also had a lot of Relic Progenitus, getting that action going as well. So yeah, the sideboard hate cards are very important for this deck.
Well, and I know at one point I saw you playing, and both sides of the table had Leyline of the Voids in play. I imagine that was an interesting game.
That was a very interesting game. It was against the Esper Goryo's Vengeance, so they were also kind of limping through the game, cut off from most of their strategy as well, since we were both very graveyard-intensive decks. But luckily, Dredge is very Jund / mid-rangey whenever it gets cut off from its graveyard. It can play its creatures just as normal creatures, and the 2/2s and 3/3s generally get there.
All right, cool. Let's look at the numbers. So this is the Dredge list that Anthony played in Tuesday Night Modern. We've got our classic Dredge enablers. We got 4 Life from the Loam, 4 Stinkweed Dip, a Golgari Thug, and a Dark Blast.
Yeah, that's the standard issue package for the Dredge cards. There's also the one Dakmor Salvage over here in the lands, but sometimes people opt to not run Dark Blast at all in the main deck and go for the second Golgari Thug. Sometimes they don't play Dakmor Salvage at all, and you see a Steam Vents. So there's just a little bit of wiggle room, but this is pretty much standard.
Okay. I bet you wish you had Grey Troll, don't you?
Oh, wouldn't that be great?
Mm-hmm. Well, so then we have our win conditions.
Yeah, our win conditions here, we're looking at 4 Prized Amalgam, 4 Narcomoeba, 4 Bloodghast, 4 Creeping Chill, and 3 Conflagrate. A lot of people I've seen recently are hedging a little bit more towards their combat and cutting one of the Conflagrates. I like having that third option. It also gives me a spot post game 1 to play around with getting into the sideboard and all of that. But this is kind of what we're doing.
Okay, so that third Conflagrate's going to be the first card out in the sideboard a lot of times.
Pretty often, yeah. Definitely context dependent, but fairly often, yeah.
And of course, the new kid on the block is Creeping Chill out of Guilds of Ravnica. Has that really made a big impact in playing Dredge?
We could do a whole video on the impact of Creeping Chill playing Dredge.
That's strong.
It does so many things for the deck. It increased terrible matchups in the past for it. Like, prior to Creeping Chill, Burn was unwinnable. Now you get that. Absolutely. That 12 extra points built into your deck of life gain that you don't necessarily have to worry about. That's 4 lightning bolts from Burn that you just don't have to stress anymore. Plus, in other matchups, having access to 12 points of damage. Because you're
speeds things up for sure.
Absolutely, and Dredge is pretty consistently going to see its entire library if it wants to. So knowing that's there.
So last but not least, we have our enablers. We've got the classics, Faithless Looting and Cathartic Reunion, but we also have Shriek Horns, which are something a little new to the Dredge deck.
So traditionally, Insolent Neonate was the go-to after it got spoiled, or I forget.
From Shadows over Innistrad.
Yeah, Shadows over Innistrad. Whenever that was printed, everybody jumped on that bandwagon. It's a 1/1, so it kind of helps the clock in the games where you don't have access to your graveyard. And then Stitcher's Supplier came out, and a lot of people were excited about that card. It's a creature, it can see 6 cards, and then everyone remembered that Shrinkhorn was a thing, and you don't have to get the back half of Stitcher's Supplier. You don't have to jump through the hoops to make it dead. You can just get your 6 cards with Shrinkhorn.
So you just get 6 cards every time, rather than having to wait for the Stitcher's Supplier to
and if they're using an Ancient Grudge or a Nature's Claim on your Shrinkhorn, you're enjoying that game.
Fair enough. And then we have a pretty standard lands package: 1 Mana Confluence, 1 Gemstone Mine. Why the 1/1?
Well, since I'm running the Dakmor Salvage, I don't have access to Steam Vents, because that's kind of the flex spot in the mana base. But you usually want to play the one of either City of Brass or Mana Confluence and the one of Gemstone Mine. I like that split because Gemstone Mine, after you remove the 3rd mine counter from it, goes to the graveyard, and you can get it right back with Life from the Loam, and it's a damageless source of mana.
Makes sense.
But that's a double-edged sword, having it only produce 3 mana and then going to the graveyard. So
sometimes you don't have Life from the Loam.
Absolutely. Sometimes you don't have the Life from the Loam. So the Mana Confluence giving you that consistent colored source of mana that can be anything is just the hedge there on the 1/1.
Okay, so as we noted before, the post-board games are much harder and really important. So let's talk about our sideboard. We've got 2 Ancient Grudges and 3 Nature's Claims. Seem to be pretty worried about artifacts right now.
Artifacts and enchantments are the main way people interact with this deck. Grafdigger's Cage, Relic of Progenitus, Nile's Spellbomb, all of those major artifacts coming out of the woodworks to fight this deck. But you still have to be paying attention to the enchantments like Rest in Peace and Leyline of the Void, so you gotta push a little harder into the Nature's Claim direction instead.
Speaking of Leyline of the Void, we also have 3 Leyline of the Voids and 2 Dampening Spheres. These seem more like traditional hate-style cards.
Absolutely. So one of our worst matchups in the metagame is Storm. And I took a loss today from Tron as well. So Damping Sphere kind of hedges on both of those matchups and conserves sideboard spots by being an answer for both of those decks.
Makes sense. And then last but not least, we have some removal options. We've got 3 Lightning Axes and 1 Dark Blast, along with 1 Assassin Trophy.
So the Lightning Axes are really good against Thing in the Ice, which has seen a lot more play in the last couple of months, especially with Arclight Phoenix decks.
Yep.
Those decks are coming out of the woodwork. Storm is playing it in its sideboard, so Thing in the Ice is a lot more popular. There's a lot of other creatures that kind of cause trouble for you. Thalia is a big deal, so Dark Blast also pulls some weight there, and also being a dredge card, so...
Yeah, and last but not least, of course, we have Assassin's Trophy, which just answers everything.
And it kills everything.
And that's that. And that's what's in Anthony's deck box. Anthony, thanks so much for coming out. I'm Aaron Hernandez, and this has been What's in the Deck Box. We'll be back at you next week with more content. Till then, have a good one.